This video is a preview of our course lesson. Please visit myconsultingcoach.com to access the full version. Here is the case. Jeans and Jeans, a Spanish clothing retailer, is considering acquiring Tops and Tops, another retailer. The CEO is convinced that T&T's superior Far East sourcing abilities will be able to control J&J's rising variable costs. He has asked for our help in evaluating whether to go ahead with this transaction. So, how would you approach this if you were to follow a framework approach? The moment the case prompt is read, framework seller in your head starts flipping through the multiple frameworks that he has practiced earlier. Market entry, new product profitability, M&A, bingo. Then you go straight ahead and apply the framework diligently. Taking the typical M&A framework, we'd get something like this. A table that compares J&J and T&T on the dimension of customers, products, competition, and company. You also try to derive insights around the synergy or the fit between the two companies on each of those dimensions. If we look at customers, J&J customers are mostly middle-aged, low-income families as compared to the young, affluent customers of T&T. There is limited synergy here. No cross-selling opportunities exist. J&J's product line comprises of low-priced jeans, whereas T&T sells high-priced tops. The competitors of the two companies are very different, and there's very little overlap. Primark and H&M compete with J&J, while Massimo Dutti and Mango compete with T&T. T&T's sourcing abilities are much stronger than those of J&J, so an acquisition could lead to potential synergy in costs. This framework approach has left you with a laundry list of pros and cons. Now what? You're basically left with a qualitative list and little guidance on what to do next. So after spending 30 minutes running through a list of questions, you have two options as to the recommendation to give. You can ask the client to go ahead, with this being justified by the cost synergy and the opportunity to gain market share. Just as readily, though, you could recommend the do-nothing option as well. The poor fit on customer segments, products, and competitors is good enough reason to suggest a no-go. Now what? There is no good option. Do you recommend the client to go ahead or to do nothing? Or worse, you might not be able to give any recommendation because you've gotten yourself into a state of analysis paralysis. Whichever way you cut it, you're in a bad spot, because none of these options actually give the interviewer what they're looking for. Fast forward 2 years into the future. It turns out no matter what you said, it doesn't end well. If you recommended going ahead, the company's variable cost would continue to rise, leading to bankruptcy. This recommendation is unlikely to get you a second-round interview. If you got stuck in analysis paralysis and ended up giving no recommendation, the outcome for the company would not have changed. In fact, even if you recommended do nothing, the same thing happens. So for all these options, the company is bankrupt and you have no second-round interview. But why? So what went wrong? 1, we were inefficient. We spent a lot of time running through the 4 sections of the framework when a lot of it wasn't relevant. 2, we were ineffective. We didn't get to the root cause of the real problem the company was facing, why the variable costs were rising in the first place, and so we didn't actually solve that problem. There's a better way. The My Consulting Coach problem-driven approach. When you follow our approach, you need to start by identifying the problem. You need to understand the real goal here. This is to reduce costs. The M&A is simply a means to achieve that cost reduction. You also need to understand the context. The business designs jeans, sources them from Far East suppliers, and sells them to lower-income families in Spain. The next step is to build your problem-driven structure. The structure needs to be a problem-driven issue tree, which follows structural requirements like messiness, level consistency, etc., and helps you segment the problem. Here is a possible structure. The reasons for the acquisition of T&T are twofold. 1 is cost synergies that will help manage the J&J's cost increase, and 2 is other possible synergies. Cost synergies can be broken down into variable and fixed costs. The other potential synergies branch can be broken down into revenue synergies and negative synergies due to the lack of fit. The variable cost can further be segmented into cost of production, supplier margin, and cost of transport. Fixed costs can be further broken into SG&A and store costs like rent, staff, etc. All of the above are relevant factors to the question at hand. This structure satisfies all the prerequisites and has been built keeping in mind the business context. The next step is the analysis. You will need to navigate the issue tree to identify the key issues, hypothesize, prioritize, and ultimately find the root cause. You then test the hypothesis and, if it is disproved, iterate. Once the root cause has been identified, you can move on to generating solutions. These will be solutions that are structured, tailored to the case situation, and actionable. In this video, we are focusing only on how our output differs as we use different methods to tackle this case. In our Lead the Analysis video, we'll explain how to navigate issue trees and generate solutions in full detail. In this case, looking into cost should be prioritized and specifically variable cost should be prioritized. This is in line with the sourcing issue identified by the CEO. You will need to validate the hypothesis that the increase came from variable costs by checking with the interviewer. But let's say it gets validated. The next step is to test the sub-issues and check if the increase in variable cost came from increased supplier margins. Let's say that this idea gets rejected. With this approach, when one hypothesis gets disproved, you move on to the next. You now need to test if cost of production is leading to the increase in costs. This gets validated by the interviewer. Once you realize that this bucket is the likely root cause, you segment that node further into reasons that could have led to the increase in production costs: raw material prices, currency effect, or more expensive products. You then test each one to find the root cause. Let's say you zero in on the fact that products have become more expensive. Always remember that the interviewer is your most useful asset during this process, as he or she has all the data. Keep engaging them in your thought process to move the analysis forward. On probing the cost increase from the change in product type, you realize that the designers have been developing more expensive products, leading to increases in both cost and price. Customers have not valued these products enough, though, leading to a loss in volumes sold. You can conclude that improving sourcing will not address the cost issue. The designers will need to avoid more upscale products. M&A doesn't address the root cause. Once the cause has been identified, you can solve the key issue by generating various solutions. For example, suggest a review of the product design process to match customer needs, or suggest keeping prices in line with low-income customers' budgets, etc. Once you're done with the first branch, move on to the other potential sources of synergy. When you dig deeper into each node, you realize that there are no revenue synergies as the two companies have different target customers and channels. In fact, there are several negative synergies, including low cultural fit between the companies and a very different approach to business. So this branch has been nullified. There are no potential positive synergies. In fact, there are several negative synergies at play. The next step is to deliver your recommendations in a top-down, structured manner. Let's see how. My recommendation is not to go ahead with the acquisition of T&T, but instead to focus efforts on revising the product design process. The reasons for this are threefold. First, the increase in cost is not addressable via better sourcing, since it stems from a change in product design misaligned with customer needs. Second, there are no other synergies to save the acquisition, since the two companies' channels and customers are radically different to one another. Finally, there appear to be fit issues. Once you give your recommendation, you should also touch on any risks and the likely next steps if this course of action were taken. Did you notice the difference? Using the problem-driven approach, we properly identified the CEO's goal, tailored our structure to the CEO's needs instead of taking a standard approach, found the real root cause of the problem in an efficient way, not wasting time on non-problem issues, and we delivered a clear, tailored, top-down recommendation. You solved the client's real problem, and just as important, you get that MBB offer. Now it's time to do it for real. Interested? Watch the full video and many more in the My Consulting Coach Academy, our end-to-end case and fit interview course, and learn to tackle problems in the same way real consultants do. Now, you may wonder, what is so special about the My Consulting Coach Academy? First, the idea behind it. 20 top ex-consultants from McKinsey, BCG, and Bain developed this course to set a new standard. We teach you to build tailored solutions to case problems rather than force-fitting some ready-made frameworks. Second, the breadth. We cover all topics related to the consulting interview, leaving nothing off the checklist. Required fundamentals, systematic case cracking, quick calculation tools, fit interview stories, and much more. We've got you covered. And finally, the active learning. We created more than 200 exercises to test your skills in the most critical areas of case interviews, including structure building, critical reasoning, analytical problems, and full cases.